with spring ball starting, Ted. It's an annual tradition now. What's your number one question for this football team heading into spring practice?
Well, there's a bunch of good things that you can throw out there. I'm going to start on the defensive side, and I my number one question is who's replacing Billy Bowman? Um, we're graduating some good players, Stutzman and Downs, and we saw all those guys in the combine, but the playmaking ability, the experience, the attitude, all of the things that Billy Bowman brought to that secondary, and there you can't have mistakes back there, and we've had some, but they are incredibly costly. And his experience that he brought to the secondary is going to be very difficult to replace. We got a bunch of good bodies. We got a bunch of, guys with great length, great physicality, speed, all the traits that you're looking for. But the experience factor that we're going to be missing from Billy Bowman is going to be crucial, and ultimately those big chunk plays over the top and making sure everyone's coordinated in the right spot, making the adjustments. Those are the most difficult thing. And you look at how great he was week in, week out for 4 years here. To me, that's the biggest question on the defense for me.
Peyton Bowen? Is that the
Perhaps,
is that the
I
natural
mean,
price replacement?
he's the guy that's played the most. He's moved around, played some different spots. Um,
Boganowski? Obviously a very different player than Billy, but we saw him. Hardy.
I mean, that's the thing is there's several guys that are capable, but can someone step in and play with the consistency that Bowman had? That's going to be very, very difficult. So the competition in the safety room this spring and through training camp is going to be critical. You got some good young guys that are coming in, early arrivals. I imagine it's going to probably be a year for those guys, but whenever you start looking at some of the names like the guys you mentioned, Powers, throw him in there. We got several guys, but who could be the most consistent? That you have to have consistency at safety. So, I mean, it'll be hard to be the defense we want to be if we can't find someone that can play close to the level and consistency that we saw with Billy Bowman.
This I'm not sure if this is a fair question or not. Did you become more worried about it when Billy tested as well as he did?
I think I became more worried about it after the Senior Bowl. Is the first time that it really hit, and just knowing all the things that he's done so well. But yeah, even you add the combine into the mix, and you got a guy that's incredibly strong, incredibly fast, physical, great athlete that you just put on top of all of the other great things that he does. The ability to find the ball. He's got some of the best instincts I've ever seen. Yeah, when you package all of that stuff together, and it's like, oh yeah, this young guy that's looked good at times is stepping in to fill those shoes, becomes pretty ominous really quickly.
Fair enough. My top question, and maybe this is a little too specific, but how much does Ben Arbuckle and this staff believe they can run John Mateer? Because I think the answer to that question will have a significant effect on what this offense looks like in 2025. He had over 800 yards rushing last year
Yep.
for Washington State, had 15 touchdowns on the ground, like a very productive runner. Dude can run. Dude is well built. But playing this schedule is a hell of a lot different than what he saw a year ago. So, how how comfortable are they with him taking hits as a runner? Because I think you have to build your offense accordingly. Remember, the spring is where you lay the foundation for everything you want to do. Now, you get into the season and you game plan some things, some of the weaknesses you've seen from opponents, but the spring, like you are going to install the core of what you're going to do as an offense. And I'm very interested in what the run game looks like because I think that's going to be determined by how comfortable they are with Mateer carrying the football as a runner. And you kind of have to build everything around that, in my opinion. So I think that's my top question for the offense is we know Mateer can run, we know he can be effective on the ground, but how much are they willing to do it? And how does that influence the way that they install things and develop things throughout the spring?
Yeah. How do they build the offense? And because we've talked about it a lot, your run game needs to tie into everything else that you do. So you need to build your play action and your counters and all of that stuff off of it. I would say that if you talk to most offensive coordinators, the answer, how much do you want your quarterback to run, is as little as possible. If he didn't have to run at all, that would be the best scenario that you could ever have. We've got an excellent run game with our backs. Our quarterback is a distributor of the football. But, whenever you've got to find an edge and make up for, some other areas that may be lacking, that's where the quarterback run game covers a bunch of things up for you. So, I would imagine that just as a guess, I think he's going to be a large part of the running game, but I don't think they want him to be as big a part of the running game as he was at Washington State if they can control that. But that's what we'll find out through the spring. That's why it's a good question.
We'll see. Do you just install some more give it run game? Like, hey, Mateer, you're not reading anything. You're not reading the backside defender. Now stare at him and make him think you are, but just hand the ball off. This is the play because we don't want you to take, don't want you to have 15 carries in a game. I don't know. I'm really interested to see what the mentality is with how they want to utilize him as a runner. All right, what's your next question, Ted?
Well, it kind of ties back into that specific question right there because it's really going to matter on how we build our run game and what personnel packages that we're going to try and build our offense from. What's the tight end group bringing to the table? There's some Devon Mitchell, a lot of eyes on him. We brought in some guys through the transfer portal. Caden Helms, Canick is moved over to play that H back tight end spot. What do they bring to the table? Are we going to be an 11 personnel team? We're going to be a 12 personnel team. Are we going to be a 13 personnel team? You're going to answer a lot of those questions through the spring you've got time to develop it for sure, but they should have an idea fairly quickly. Do we have multiple guys that we're going to be able to put on the field at tight end at the same time?
Is it okay if I rephrase that question in more modern college football terms?
Sure.
How much money do we need to raise to go get tight ends in the spring portal?
Right.
That
Yeah.
Do we need one or two? Do we need three? We got to know.
Yep.
Got to figure it out. It's no disrespect to any of those guys, but we all know that there are no proven players in that room. Just how much? What's the investment going to need to be to go get help at that position?
The first on-field practice picture we see of Jim Nagy will probably be the arms crossed watching the tight end drills, right? Is that the first picture we're going to see from
That's
him
that's a good prediction.
wearing the OU visor and polo on the sidelines?
No, Jim's a smart man, very smart man. He's gonna be staring at O line, D line.
Okay.
He's
All
gonna
right.
be he's gonna have a close eye on the trenches first. Make
That's
sure
right.
that all's good in that world.
Yeah.
Which perfect segue to my second question: who's our best offensive tackle? Who's OU's best offensive tackle? I'm very interested in that heading into spring. We got a whole lot of guys. I think there's gonna be a great battle for both of those spots. And I assume Logan Howland's gonna be very, very limited in the spring coming off the surgery. But I mean, you've got Jacob Sexton, Jake Taylor, Isaiah Autry Dent, as guys that have been here. And then you got all the newcomers. Derek Simmons, Luke Baklenko, the two freshmen, Fasusi and Foje. That's a lot of guys. But who's the best? Because I know this. When the season rolls around, there's going to be creatures coming off the edge in the SEC.
Yep.
And I think you can get by with two serviceable tackles, but I would love to have a guy that proves himself and comes out and it's like, hey, that guy is playing at a very high level. And maybe that's not fair for Fasusi and Foje because they just got there. But we've seen freshman offensive linemen play at some of the best programs in the country.
Yeah.
So that's one of my biggest questions going into spring is who is OU's best offensive tackle? I do not know the answer to that question right now. And it would be awfully nice as we start spring ball, get a couple weeks into it, if a guy or two, and in a perfect world, 3 or 4 people are going, man, these guys are playing at a really high level.
Yeah.
But Ted, I don't know who, if there's a standout in that group of
I don't
tackles.
think they know.
I'm with you. That's
I don't
that's
think
why
they know.
it's.
Yeah.
I think it's a really interesting question, and luckily, R. Mason Thomas, he's going to test every one of these guys. We know R. Mason Thomas is a good player. I'm sure Marvin Jones Jr. Like we've seen some of the flashes of what he can be as a pass rusher. Like this group's going to get weeded out. We'll see. We'll see who emerges, like who rises to the top.
Yeah. No, I think, and we've got a good group of guys that have had some action that are going to be able to go out there and mix it up. Got a couple of guys through the transfer portal and some guys baptized by fire over the last year or so. Jake Taylor, Sexton, you mentioned Logan Howland, and then we've got young guys that are coming in. So the depth feels like it should be in an okay spot to where you're not, oh my God, who are we going to play at tackle? We're going to have to move a guard or something. But I mean, I think that it feels like with that group, you have a fairly high floor and potential for breakout talent in Foje and Fasusi.
That's how it feels. All right, what's your next question?
Well, it ties right into my final question. Who plays opposite R. Mason Thomas? It was a big deal whenever he came back. And you mentioned Marvin Jones Jr. through the transfer portal, but PJ, I mean, this is a big make or break spring, off season, into the fall for him. Danny Okoye, we've seen some great flashes. We did the in the weeds on Marvin Jones Jr. There's some real nice traits that he brings in some decent pass rush skills, but Are we have to develop some more depth there and, frankly, consistency and playmaking ability. I mean, you got to have it. You mentioned it. We're going to see creatures in this conference. Most everyone we play has two guys that are really good on the edge. And we've played good defense here. We had our Mason Thomas and Ethan Downs, what he brought. We have to have, like, that's a big hole on the defense in my mind. While I think the defense looks pretty good, you start to consider, what if we don't have Billy Bowman's playmaking ability on the back end and what he brought at safety? And what if we don't have consistency at the other edge spot? Um, Things could get hairy pretty quickly. The good thing is we've got some guys with excellent traits that are set up to play those spots, but we haven't seen it in any real uh, length of time at all from anyone. Flashes, yes, but consistency is critical.
Marvin Jones Jr., all the measurables you're looking for, violence has to crank up.
Yep.
We talked about that on the In the Weeds. I still think Taylor Wine.
Yep.
I think he's the most natural replacement for Ethan Downs. Big, physical, kind of crazy. Nigel Smith is a guy we haven't seen.
That's right. True.
Very highly recruited. Walked by him a bunch on the sideline last year. Big guy. How far along has he come? So I think Okoye is more of like a
Specialist.
I don't know. I don't know. Like, he's so twitchy and athletic, but can he do like all the dirty work that the position requires? If he can do that, then get that guy on the field as much as you possibly can. But I think we're also waiting. Hey, PJ, it's time, right?
That's
So
right.
you're right. That is a big question mark on the defensive side of the ball heading into spring. And we'll probably have the exact same question heading into the fall. But
Right.
and Ethan, I'll just be real. The way that Ethan tested at the combine made me go, okay, that guy played a lot of football here and
4 years.
pretty dang good athlete and
Played
strong
a
as hell.
bunch of football. Played 4 straight years. True freshman all the way through senior. I mean, do you remember him missing much time at all? I mean,
No,
incredibly durable, incredibly consistent. You may not have had a whole lot of flash plays out of him, but I mean, give me a guy that is there, ready to work, knows his job, executes it, game in, game out. I mean, you've got to have guys like that. I mean, that's the thing is we're we're replacing three main guys on our defense, and they all played a ton of football. They were big name guys and made big plays, but also the level of consistency that you got from those three guys is difficult to replicate.
no doubt. My last question. Let's go back to the defensive line, shall we? Has David Stone made a jump?
Yeah.
I think we all feel pretty solid about the interior of the defensive line. Grayson Halton back. Dominic Williams back. Jaden Jackson back. But if you line up all of those dudes, one guy stands out from the pack physically, and it's David Stone.
Yep.
Ted, you say it all the time. Your 5 stars have to be 5 stars.
That's right.
And we saw some decent stuff from David Stone last season, but we got to start seeing more.
Yeah.
And you need big time difference makers on the defensive line if you want to make some noise next season.
Yeah.
And Stone, he's got all the traits, man. It has to start coming together. And my hope is that the ascent started in winter workouts, and now we're going to start to see him get closer and closer to the ceiling of what he's going to be as a player. Got to see it, man.
I agree. I've liked everything that I saw from David Stone. Just like you mentioned it physically, he's got some really good traits, but I'm talking more. He didn't show up and say, I'm a 5 star. It's below me to have to prove it and earn my stripes and develop. I've loved his attitude the whole time. But yeah, Stone, like you go back to PJ, 5 star, David Stone, Peyton Bowen, Fasusi coming in. I mean, it's early for him, but uh, Devon Mitchell was supposed to be a 5 star tight end until he reclassified. Like these big time players have to show up. I mean, it's one thing that we see in the SEC. Yeah, they recruit well. There's 5 stars all over the place, and they show up on game day.
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll get out to a couple practice, see what's what. I don't know. Like, I'm interested to see what the practice structure is like if they're trying to reduce the workload and some of the contact and trying to keep these guys as healthy as possible.
Yeah,
I find that hard to believe with Brent Venables as the head coach, but we'll see.
we'll see. Yeah, I've got my complaints about practice, and it's not even necessarily a Venables thing, but we'll see. I mean, I'll be fascinated to see what it looks like for sure.